Hey everybody, welcome to the Herd Fit Podcast with Dr. Sam Rhee and myself, Coach David Syvertsen. This podcast is aimed at helping anyone and everyone looking to enhance their healthy lifestyle through fitness, nutrition, and most importantly, mindset.
And welcome back to the Herd Fit Podcast. Coach David Syvertsen with Dr. Sam Rhee and another very special guest. I think we actually propped her chair higher than us too, so we look ultra short. She looks like a queen. It looks like we're on the Game of Thrones right now.
This is status. I
feel it.
This is Coach Kayla Simpson. Kayla, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
We have a bunch of different topics that we're going to talk to in regard to nutrition. That is Kayla's specialty. But before we get into topic number one, we want Kayla, just give us a very quick rundown of who you are in regard to CrossFit and who you are in regard to nutrition, and why should we be listening to you?
Well, let me tell you. So I joined CrossFit about 7 years ago. I was introduced to it by a really good friend and coach, Eric Ellingson, and
mutual friend of ours.
Yes. So I came to CrossFit with zero experience, pretty mediocre athlete at best.
Do you remember your first workout? Because I do.
It was thrusters. There was thrusters in it, and it was
open workout.
It was like 15.1.
15.5, and it was 21, 18, 15, 12, 9, 6, 3. Thrusters at 65, bar facing burpees.
That was the worst.
It's one of the worst open workouts ever.
And that was
her first.
my first intro to CrossFit.
Wow. Yep.
Yes. And so, I mean, really, I found my passion for exercise through CrossFit, I would say, versus sport. So that led me down the path of becoming an athletic trainer and then morphing basically the two together to be CrossFit coach because of you guys, and then really leading it to a bigger career of athletic training and then into nutrition. So diving into the nutrition world after I found that these things go hand in hand.
Cool. Yeah, they absolutely do. That's really what we're going to be talking about. You just got done with school?
Yes. So my undergrad is in athletic training, and I just finished my master's degree in nutrition and dietetics. And so I will be sitting for my RD exam, my registered dietitian exam, in the next month or so.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kayla's a great resource for us in this room, but also anyone that's listening. You know, we can all go get, and I have a couple, your online or weekend nutrition certs, which, they have value, but to have someone that went to school, and I've seen some of the stuff that she has to do, papers, tests, assignments, years and years of work. Having a resource like Kayla around us has been a huge benefit and will continue to be a huge benefit. And I think that she has a lot of nutrition specialty people don't have the experience with CrossFit that she does. And a lot of people that have the experience with CrossFit don't have the nutrition experience that she does. So it's rare to find someone like this. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have her on, that she gets it. I think some people that you talk to in regard to nutrition, they don't really completely understand what we do, and vice versa. I think a lot of people that do CrossFit and can coach a CrossFit class really well, they don't completely understand all the ins and outs of nutrition. So I just think that Kayla is a huge resource that we hope can help all you guys out, no matter where you're at with nutrition, whether you're at with CrossFit, with health, fitness, exercise, all that good stuff. So topic number one is going to be eating for sport versus health. And Sam and I have talked about sport versus health CrossFit. And I think, it's almost like a topic that we love to talk about because we still don't really have the objective measurements of the difference between the two. But it's a great conversation because I think it inspires a lot of thought. And what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think for most of us, we always come back to this topic because we ourselves are wrestling with it all the time.
Right.
And I think a lot of our athletes are also wrestling with it all the time. But the thing about it is that eating and nutrition is so fundamental for all of it. And the problem is that in medicine, unfortunately, nutritional science is awful. I can tell you as a physician, the amount of knowledge that we learned in medical school and in residency in regards to nutrition was less than almost any other topic, yet it's one of the most important. And I know you saw in the hospital how important, the role nutritionists play for patients. I think it's gotten even bigger. And I think I'm really excited. If I was going into nutrition right now, I'd be really excited because I think the research and the study and the outcomes and the new findings that they're coming out with, especially not just for sick people, but for healthy people, for metabolism, for elderly people, for performance. These are things that I think in the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to see an explosion of great protocols and new science and things that will flip traditional nutritional thinking on its head. And that's why I'm excited that we're talking about it today as well.
Me as well, Sam. That brings up a great point that in the hospital I actually saw. I saw a lot of our physicians rely on us for nutrition education in general and just nutrition recommendations. They really look to us, they lean on us, and that was a really awesome thing to experience, and something that I didn't know before I started nutrition school per se is depending upon what you study in your degree or throughout your experience to become a doctor, you could get one class or one semester, not even a semester, on nutrition. And it blows my mind when people come back from their doctor's appointment and they have nutrition advice from their doctor, and it is completely against the grain of what I would recommend. And it's kind of scary.
Outdated, right?
I mean, you should always talk to your physicians as always. And
of course,
this is all for us to just help people. It's not, we're not giving you straight medical advice to follow 100, this is all information for you to use.
Yes.
But you're right. Just like you have many doctors who still say, oh, you have an injury, just rest, don't move, lie in bed. Yeah. And there are still many people who do that. There are still people who are like, okay, this is what you should be eating and doing, when it is completely outdated, outmoded, and not what we as athletes should be thinking about.
Right. But it is getting better. I will say that.
So the first thing I really want to dive into in regard to nutrition when it comes to sport versus health, and again, a lot of these things that Kayla will probably give to us probably have a lot of parallels between the two, but again, I do think there are subtle differences. The first thing I want to talk about is volume of eating. I think this is one of the most difficult things, and we'll probably do a later episode with you on if those that want to get into macro counting and how much should you eat, how much should you not eat, when should you eat. The volume of eating, I think, is probably one of the biggest issues people have, and it goes in both directions. I think a lot of people undereat for what we do here, whether you're in the sport or health, but especially in the sport. I have a lot of people that want to compete, right? They'll come and do a hard workout, and then they won't eat when they get home. They won't eat till 6 hours later. They're eating, 1,400 calories in a day, and they're doing 2-3 workouts a day. And at some point, you're going to have zero fuel, and you're going to just get down on yourself. You're going to feel like you can't recover, you can't perform. But also on the other side, there's obviously people in this country and maybe even some in the shin that they overeat. And I think there's a question, how much should you be eating? And, how can one go about figuring that out?
Good question. And it's going to look different, maybe not severely different, but it will look a little different for eating for high-level sport and competition versus eating for regular day-to-day life.
Right.
I agree. I see the volume of food, people severely underestimate how much they need.
Right.
Especially when it comes to if you're eating fruits, vegetables, whole grains, you need a lot of those protein, lean sources of protein to fuel your body.
Right.
And to provide enough energy. So if you're used to eating really high calorically dense processed food, you're going to need less of it. And then when you switch over to eating more of a cleaner, quote unquote, style of eating, you need the volume of food you need to replace is enormous. It's a lot more than people think. So practical numbers to work with. I'm going to give an example because you said 1,400 calories.
Yeah.
I mean, that happens a lot.
Right.
And a toddler needs 1,200 calories.
Really?
A toddler.
I didn't know that.
1,200 calories.
I'm going to start counting blocks and macros.
That's their baseline
Wow.
to grow.
Wow.
And the amount of times I see women, men sitting around that point and saying like, oh, I'm here for weight loss. You need to eat more.
Right.
Like, you just need to eat more.
Yeah.
And specifics, just to get a bigger picture, if you take your body weight and convert it into kilograms. So divide it by 2.2, your body weight divided by 2.2. And the ballpark range, the recommended for the average adult is take that, your body weight in kilograms, and multiply it by a range of 25 to 30. So times by 25 to 30. That's a ballpark range. Even for an athlete, maybe it's a little bit higher for an athlete, but
And you're talking calories?
calorie-wise.
Okay.
Calorie-wise.
Okay.
So it's a lot higher than people think. And then for people who are overeating and going way beyond that, it's all right, so I need to eat fruits and vegetables, but now they're not eating enough of it because they're so less calorically dense.
Right. Yeah, I mean, just to give like a real life example of that is I can remember when I first started counting macros years ago. I want to say the first time I did it was 2015, 2016. And I was a big processed food guy for a long time. Even like the foods and you felt okay about it because the box said it was heart healthy or it was low fat or blah, 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 right? And, you know, the second you take that food out and you replace with vegetables and rice and avocados and lean chicken, right? Lean meat, you get to a point where like you felt like you're eating half the amount of food that you were. So like that, like it's, if you have a pile of food over here that's processed food and it's not that much, right? So you feel good about it. You take, all right, that's out. I'm going to take all this healthy food, same amount of food, right? But then you look at the calories, you start writing down these macros, you're like, you're not even halfway. And that's when it comes into like a lot of people freak out when they hear they have to eat more.
Yes.
Because so many people have a goal of like, they just want to be 10 pounds lighter. It's going to make all the difference. And honestly, you can still get 10 pounds lighter by eating more. And I think it like the knowledge / critical thinking that goes into people's diets about like, I really think that they're only looking at how much they're eating on a calorie perspective. They're not only looking at how easily digestible these foods are. So I think that's like something that everyone should just, if there's one thing that from this episode I want you to take away from is you take that processed food out, you're going to be eating more food.
100%.
Let me ask you this. So if you have a client and let's suppose they feel like they're 15 to 20 pounds overweight and they just don't like the way they look, they feel heavy and they say, I feel fat. When you go through this process of developing plans and, you know, because maybe they tried it themselves, maybe they said, okay, this is what I feel like I should be eating. If I just eat 200 calories less a day or 300 calories less than what I should normally be eating, I'll be at a deficit. I should be able to lose weight. Does that work?
It doesn't always work. It works to a degree initially because a calorie deficit, if you are in one, it will work. You will lose a certain amount of weight in that period of time. But the question is it sustainable? What are the other things going on in your life? What's your water intake like? What are your stress factors? What about your sleep? And it's more than just calories. It's the nutrients within the calories. It's also quality. So the quality of your food matters. It doesn't have to be all organic 100% of the time, but the micronutrients within the food also play a role for everything else in your body, for all your organ functions, your brain, to make your body function optimally. Not even optimally, just even at baseline, to make you feel good. And it's more than calories for weight loss because all of those things do tie into it.
Yeah, I agree with you 1,000% on that. The other thing is every time I've tried to do calorie deficits, I rebound. My appetite, I just start making poor food choices because I'm just so hungry. Yeah, and your body just fights you. You can do it for a little while, but you can't really do that for a long period of time.
Right. Now, let me ask, so if I want to ask you a question, I've always wanted to ask your opinion on this because part of me just feels like it makes sense, but the other part of me says, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. You're in this for sport, all right? So let's say you have a client that's in this for sport and they listen to the Matt Fraser podcast on Joe Rogan, and you know you're talking about how he right after a workout would pound either Coca-Cola and or eat a Snickers bar. And he pound within 5 minutes. And I get, replenishing all your stores, but give some thoughts on that. Now, you wouldn't necessarily recommend that for someone that's here for health, right? Like you got,
Correct.
right? But for someone that's in it for sport, you know, that's where I think one of the biggest differences, like what did I do after that? You know, he was big on Gatorade powder and putting, I think, three big scoops into 5 ounces of water. So like you're just literally drinking Gatorade sludge, and like you go look at the contents and like this is 170 grams of sugar that I'm putting into my body. And I tried it for a few times. I felt sick immediately. And give some thoughts on someone that's in this for sport, how much they need to put attention into replenishing via carbs and or protein.
I love this one. I want to preface this by I want to give the evidence-based approach to this and also my professional evidence-based opinion. But your body, so for replenishing after a workout, for carbohydrates specifically, and for sugar, this also goes for sugar. In that moment, your body cannot tell if it's sugar coming from a Snickers bar or sugar coming from 5 apples in that moment.
Right.
Because your body, if it's just plain sugar, let's say you literally took the Gatorade powder that had a lot of sugar and you just mixed it with water, downed it after a workout. Your carbohydrate stores will be replenished in that moment, and your body can't really tell which sugar it's coming from. So sure, you got the job done. Over time, doing that over and over and over again, what else is in that Snickers bar? You have other chemicals, you have other things that maybe you can't pronounce on the label. It's going to cause that refined sugar over time in serious large amounts, inflammation. There's other ingredients within those things that now your body can't tell.
Right.
Now your body's slowing down. Now you have GI discomfort.
Yeah.
Because there's also a certain amount of carbohydrates and sugar that once you exceed that, now you're working with GI discomfort and bloating and gas, and then you can't get to your next workout.
Right.
For the average person.
Yeah.
Matt Fraser, he's also top 1%.
Genetic freak.
Top 1% of the world. But my main takeaway on that is, no, I would not recommend downing a Coke and downing a Snickers bar post-workout. But the idea of replenishing carbohydrates is important post-workout. Now, it's the quality that you would want to focus on, especially if you're fueling for sport specifically, some sort of carbohydrate. But look at the other benefits of the micronutrients coming from things like, maybe it's a sugar substance. That's fine because you need it and it's quick and it's fast. So something more along the lines of raisins or fruit or bananas, or even if it is sugar, like sugar is not the devil. It's just how much you have of it.
Right.
And if you have there's plenty of other electrolyte packets that are lower in sugar, that have the appropriate amount of magnesium and sodium and
Pedialyte, baby.
Yeah, Pedialyte.
It's my go-to.
But there are other forms of sugar that are going to be better for you and more sustainable in the long run, and better for your overall health and organs and arteries.
Right. Right. So it's not just about bouncing back. Like you listen to that Matt Fraser podcast, you're like, okay, yeah, so I have a workout, then I have another one an hour later, like just go down the Snickers. And again, the short window is, yes, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Well,
but long term, it doesn't.
Right, because Kayla, it makes total sense to me. So I wasn't able to parse it until you put it in those terms. Yes, replenishing your carbohydrates, good concept. Replenishing it with a Snickers, not necessarily the best form of replenishing your carbohydrates. As you said, there's a lot of junk in there. It's also when you have a large sugar load that's so dense, the reason why you feel sick and I feel sick is that's a huge osmotic load to have that ginormous bolus of sugar. That's why something like Pedialyte, I mean, you might have to drink larger quantities of it,
right?
But your gut will probably tolerate that better. And as Kayla says, it's not just a single workout; it's workout after workout after workout. Now, Matt Fraser he was champion for 5 years in a row. But if he did that every time he worked out for 10 or 15 or 20 years, as most of us want to be able to work out for that long,
right?
Is that, as Kayla said, sustainable?
Right.
No, there's a lot of gunk in that stuff, including artificial colors and flavors and all sorts of other things, additives that are not great.
Right.
And
but we do agree that we should be trying to replenish soon after you work out, right?
Yes.
Like whether you're sport or health, right?
Yes.
To work out and then not eat for 4 or 5 hours after is a foolish decision, probably just as foolish as downing a Snickers, right?
I agree.
absolutely.
Yeah. Because they do need to be replenished. And I think that's one thing. I think a lot of people, especially our morning athletes, I've been told by a few of them, they'll go through a nasty workout 4 or 5 days a week, don't eat till lunchtime. And, you know, what are some of the things that, you know, inside, like internally, what happens at some point when you are not replenishing, and whether it be carb, protein, for that much time after a workout?
What happens when you work out is your muscle fibers are literally breaking down. That's the process of when you work out and load the tissue and load the muscle. And when you do that, you have to replenish what was lost so you can build muscle and recover. It's just a natural process.
Right.
If you constantly are loading and loading and loading and not replenishing, things like injury are going to start to happen. Aches and pains that weren't there before. Sarcopenia with loss of muscle. You can actually not even gain muscle at that point. Like, oh, I just want to get big and eat well. Well, you're not going to gain any size if you're not going to replenish what you lost.
Right. I think that's one of the most important things people need to get out of this one is, again, volume of eating needs to be higher than a toddler, you know, that's part one. And P, I do
Please.
think, and I don't want to get too deep into nutrient timing. We only have a few minutes left on this episode, but I do want to get the idea that there needs to be a plan post-workout what you're doing with your food. There has to be.
I think Kayla hit it on the nail right on the head, which is you're in a catabolic state, which is all the things that you're doing. She said you're breaking down your muscle. That's exactly right. You're stressing yourself out, and you need to go back into your anabolic phase, which is growing. And if you don't have your nutrients on board with you, guess what your body is going to do? It's going to break down stuff that you don't want broken down. You're going to lose muscle mass. You're going to lose function. You're going to lose the things that you're actually trying to build up while you're fitnessing, basically. And you know, there's some really good evidence that eating some sort of caloric intake, not just the carbohydrates, but also other macros afterwards, is really important. So when you have clients, what do you recommend that they do post-workout for you?
Post-workout, we want to make sure there's a carbohydrate and a protein together.
Okay.
They work off of each other.
Okay.
In order to be best absorbed into the muscle, meaning the protein best absorbed into the muscle, the carbohydrate actually helps that process. So having both of those within some sort of meal, post-workout within an hour. That's what I say. There is that window after you work out, and studies show various timings, and so it's controversial, but within an hour, 30 minutes to an hour, replenish what you lost.
And what kind of foods do you think are acceptable, okay, well tolerated for athletes usually?
Any sort of meal, my approach is food first. So if you can get home and get a lean source of protein and some carbohydrate form of a whole grain or a vegetable, that would be awesome. Lean sources of protein, a lot of us already know. They already know. So if you can have some sort of egg or egg whites and meats, lean cuts of meat, chicken, salmon. Not everyone wants to go home and have a piece of salmon on their, for breakfast. Maybe they do, but making more practical options. And even if you don't have time, you can supplement with a protein powder. Generally, get it through food first and then fill the gaps in your diet with other things like all of these supplements and protein powders. But fruits, vegetables, other sources of lean cuts of protein.
Yeah. I mean, we're big on simple's better. I just think that the longer I do this with coaching and every now and then helping people out with like some lifestyle stuff, simple is better. And like that answer that Kayla said, like, it's almost like we already know that answer, right? But sometimes it does help. You need someone to tell you that, right? Like I worked with Kayla a little bit early in the summer, and we were just kind of like bouncing some ideas off each other with her programming and then my nutrition, and like a lot of the stuff that you hear, but it always helps to have someone else tell you like, hey, let's confirm this and, be accountable to me. Like, this is the macros you got to hit December today. I want to see that you're hitting these macros, right? But I do think nutrition is really overwhelming for a lot of people. And I think the simpler you can make it, the better it is.
Let me ask a couple sports-specific questions. I know we didn't go over this, so I'm just throwing it at you.
Uh-oh, on the spot.
So my first question is, creatine is one of the most popular diet supplements that people have. What do you think about creatine for athletes?
I like creatine. It's safe. It's safe for athletes. It depends on your dosage. And I don't think everyone has to take it. If you want to get to that next level, and if you're a really competitive athlete, or maybe you're someone who is older and can't recover as faster or as fast anymore, there are really good studies on creatine that it is perfectly safe to take, and optimal dosage is within 3 to 5 grams. And you'd have to just read the back of that label and make sure there's no other crap ingredients in there. And it does produce muscle growth, and it helps sustain muscle growth over a period of time. There is a myth that it's going to make you gain a crazy amount of weight.
Because of water retention?
Because of water retention. And honestly, within the research that I've done, the average amount is like 2 pounds. It's if you do it right.
Right.
People cycle in and out of creatine, but you don't necessarily have to. And I say, if you're training for something with over a couple months, adding creatine could help or support muscle growth and recovery in the long run.
My other question would be, what do you find is most deficient nutritionally in athletes? Like, for example, when I was working out for a while, when I first started, I was getting these awful leg cramps at night, and that I never used to get. And then I actually started taking a magnesium, which again, I don't know if this is real or not real, but perceived, and it really helped me a lot. Do you find that there's certain things that maybe athletes need more of than if they're not training so much?
Water.
Okay. No. Good point.
I want to give her a hug for saying that.
Wow, so true.
It is so true. Yeah.
Yeah. Water is huge, but this is where it becomes more specific to the person of what does your overall diet look like, and are you getting enough calories, but also are you eating foods with potassium, magnesium, sodium, like an electrolyte? If you really struggle with water, but also if you drink too much water, you can also be low on some of these certain electrolytes. So maybe that is beneficial. But commonly, water, protein seems to be okay. It depends on the client, but it seems to be that people think they need a lot more than they actually do.
How about this? If someone's going to, if I come to you and say I need to eat 175 grams of protein, and one of the issues I had when I talked to you about is I would save almost 100 of those grams the last hour of my day. At some point, do you think people overdo certain doses of protein at once? Because they just forget, or they don't want to have it right away, or it just doesn't fit with the convenience of their lifestyle that, I'm just too busy during the day. I'm just going to save all this stuff for tonight. At some point, you can't break down the protein if you're just having 100 grams in one sitting.
Correct. All of the above of what you said. Optimally in one sitting, no more than 40 to 45 grams is going to be processed and broken down for muscle use, for lean muscle use.
That's a good number for people to know.
Yes. Yeah. The rest is going to be burned as energy somewhere else in your body.
Right.
Therefore, spread your protein out throughout the day.
Protein every meal.
Yes.
Ideally.
Yes. Getting it in after your workout with carbohydrates. And if you can't get it in 3 meals throughout the day, break it up into 2 other snacks. That is I just did a big paper on nutrition and injury and how to avoid it. That would be one of the big factors that goes into it. And also recovery and muscle building.
Cool. I like that.
It's funny. CrossFit has always proposed, they were big proponents of the zone diet, which is what you're talking about, coupling every meal, like fats, carbohydrates, proteins together. But sometimes meals are 90% carbs and like 10% proteins and fats. So, tell your clients to really focus? I mean, I know like post-workout and all this stuff, but what happens if you have a meal that's maybe you're hitting your macros, but you're eating something that's super fatty, and I encountered this when I was doing my macros, to try to adhere to a zone diet where it's just perfectly proportioned for every meal is really challenging.
Very challenging and often not sustainable. And it's okay. I would say it's okay, first of all. You don't have to be perfect every single time. But what you want to avoid is saving all of your calories and all of your macros or most of them for that evening hour or later, and just one meal later in the day, especially if you're not going to be working out around that time. And if you have these meals that are higher in fat or higher in carbs, maybe a couple times a week or maybe more than that, it's okay. You can adjust and pivot from there, but that's where we'd have to see, are you truly not, like, can we really fit something else within your lifestyle? Like, can we adjust, or is it just something that you've created because of it's a habit?
Because I love ice cream so much.
I love ice cream too, Sam. Please don't get rid of the ice cream.
So, yeah, all right, Kayla, that was awesome. That was a great first episode with you. First, for those that are listening, we still have more coming up. This really kind of opened the door to what are the minimums for healthy eating for both, whether you're working out for sport, if you're working out for health. What are some things that just, some numbers that you guys can keep track of without going nuts? And just a great introduction, and looking forward to these next episodes.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Herd Fit podcast. Be on the lookout for next week's episode.